Before Wall Street ever existed, before stock markets, before billion-dollar banks, there was a group of Americans quietly becoming richer than most investors today, and they were not wearing suits, they were wearing muddy boots. Most people think wealth in America started with New York stock exchanges and big corporations, but the real millionaires of early America lived in small farmhouses, worked the land, and controlled something far more powerful than money. They controlled food, and food is the most powerful currency in history. In the 1800s, America was not a nation of skyscrapers and trading floors. It was a nation of dirt roads, wooden barns, and endless farmland stretching beyond the horizon. Almost 90% of Americans were farmers, and while the cities were poor and struggling, farmers were quietly building massive wealth. They did not use banks. They did not trade stocks. They did not borrow money. They owned land, and land in America was the real gold. In early America, money was unreliable. Because banks failed and currencies collapsed, but land always produced food, and food meant survival. Farmers did not just grow corn and wheat, they controlled the supply of what everyone needed to live. And if a city ran out of food, people starved. If a farmer ran out of money, he still had land crops, or animals in storage, and that made farmers powerful, and power always leads to wealth. A single large farm could feed thousands of people, which meant cities depended on farmers, and dependence creates leverage. Farmers could raise prices, store grain and weight, and sell when food was scarce and prices were high. Unlike factory workers, farmers did not work for wages, they worked for ownership, and ownership is how millionaires are made. In the Midwest, farmers began forming massive grain operations, building silos, controlling storage, and creating transportation networks. By controlling not just farming but distribution, they became agricultural tycoons, and some farmers were earning more than bankers. But no one noticed because they did not wear suits, they wore overalls. When money lost value, food did not. In fact, food became more valuable, giving farmers a natural hedge against inflation. They could raise prices, trade crops, and barter, and they did not need banks because the land produced wealth year after year. That is how dynasties were built, and by the late 1800s, some farming families owned thousands of acres, rented land, hired workers, and sold grain internationally. They were millionaires before the word millionaire was even common. Yet history never talks about them because Wall Street stole the spotlight. The richest farmers controlled entire regions, and if they did not sell, cities suffered, which gave them political power. Governments, armies, and nations depended on farmers, meaning they were not just growing crops, they were growing influence.
Paragraph 22.
Then came the banks, then came Wall Street, and then came debt, and farmers were offered loans, machinery, and credit. At first it felt like progress, but debt changed everything, and land shifted from ownership to obligation. Many farmers borrowed too much, and when prices dropped, banks took their land, turning owners into tenants. That is how financial empires were born, but the secret of farmer wealth was never investing. It was controlling necessities. Food, water, and land are the foundations of every economy, even today. Modern billionaires do not grow wheat, but they control data, energy, and supply chains, because the formula never changed. Control what people need, and you control wealth because stocks can crash and money can lose value. But ownership of essentials never becomes worthless. That is why farmers were the first millionaires to survive. Before Wall Street taught people to chase paper money, farmers taught America how to build real wealth by owning, producing, and controlling supply. So the real question is not how farmers become millionaires. The real question is, what do you control today that people cannot live without? Comment what you think, like if this changed how you see money, and subscribe to Finance TED Official, because real wealth has always been hiding in plain sight.